This is Nobody Cares. So this is December of 1973, and I had a friend, I'm in Europe, and I had a friend from back home who was traveling Europe at the same time. And we had never planned to leave together, but we did have a plan to meet up, and that plan was for Las Palmas on the Canary Islands on Christmas Day, which was actually a very stupid idea when you think about it, Christmas Day. But that's what it was anyway. I guess somebody suggested it, and the other guy agreed to it, and so we're stuck with it. And so I took the ferry from Spain over to the Canary Islands. It was like a 3-day trip, 2 full days, a couple nights, or I just forget exactly. And on that trip, I met 3 other guys from Saskatchewan that were doing the same as what I was doing. They were Terry from Regina, Damon from Prince Albert, and Lee was from Cabri. And for the first people that I'd met from Saskatchewan, and so meet them on the ship, and we hit it off right away. Now, I've already talked about this, about what a wild ride it was, and everybody getting sick, and they were 3 of the people who were sick. So I didn't see too much of them during the ride across. But anyway, when we got to Las Palmas, they had a Volkswagen van that they had purchased in Amsterdam at the beginning of their trip to travel around in, which is, a great idea. If you've got 3 guys like that, or even 2 or a couple, it would be a great way to see Europe. And so I hop on board with them. And now I have to just say, this is a long time ago, and I've been thinking about this story, or telling this story, for a little while right now, and I'm having a lot of trouble with dates and exactly when we did what, because there's some travel back and forth, as you're going to find out here. So I'm going to just sort of bypass a lot of that, like saying we spent 2 days here doing this, and even things like, where did you spend the night? Well, some of it I can remember, some I can't, and I might have it out of order, so I'm just going to leave a lot of that stuff alone. But so anyway, I hop in with these guys, and I don't know what we did that first night. But we weren't in Las Palmas very long, and we heard about a place called Soria, where a lot of people were living for free. And it was kind of towards the middle of the island. And so we figured out how to get there and headed in that direction. Las Palmas is too touristy. It's too expensive. We didn't want that, couldn't afford it, didn't need it. And so we were happy to hear about this place, Soria. And so we do, and we find it. Now, Soria, there was a dam that was built, and for a hydroelectric dam, and there was some sort of a problem with the dam. It had been fully functional and had formed the artificial lake and everything. And I believe it was a crack in the dam, and they were worried that this might lead to a big disaster. I hope this story is true. This is how I was told the story anyway. And so they drained the lake. And the result of that was that all the land that they had purchased to build this artificial lake, land that was going to be lost because of this lake, bought the farmers out. But all of the buildings that were part of these farms, all these small farms that they had purchased, were still there because they were all made out of stone and sort of a cement structure, cement walls, so they weren't really stone. I don't know how to describe them. And there was a lot of them, and there was hippies from all over the world that had just kind of moved in there and were living in these buildings and living for free. A lot of these buildings didn't have the roof on them anymore for some reason, but that's fine because the Canary Islands, I'm not sure it rained the whole time I was there, and it has this wonderful climate. It's close to the equator, but it's very temperate. I was told that it never gets below 68 degrees. This is Fahrenheit, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and never hotter than 72 degrees. And that the only change is that in the summertime it gets to be a lot more humid. So we find this place, like I said, and start wandering around. Now there's a river, so there's buildings on either side of the river, and somebody had built a raft so that you could cross the river, and it was just a rope that went across with the raft. You pulled yourself across, and we did find a place that was vacant. Now, I don't think it was totally vacant. I think it was a big place. And so we got like one half of the house, or less than that, 2 rooms or whatever it was. And we just moved right in there and staked a claim to it. And that's where we stayed for, again, I'm not sure how many days. So this was not a hippie commune. It was a community of hippies, is a better way to put it. There was nothing organized about it, no cooperative effort going on as far as meals or anything like that. Everybody was on their own. And there was a little store. Now you had to climb back up out of this valley to get to the store. It was quite steep. It was quite a chore actually to get up to the store. But they had all the groceries that you would need there: fresh vegetables, a lot of canned goods. You could get like canned ham or any canned vegetable you want, and fresh eggs. Okay, so I always talk about commerce, about there's commerce everywhere I've been, and so I need to tell the story about Dino, and we had nicknamed this guy Dino, and I know there was no malice in it. It was just, he was a midget, and he had got a little business going for himself. That climb up to the store, it was really steep, and part of that, like it had been groomed before the lake was formed, and I was trying to think about what the angle would be, and I think 45 degrees, that might be a little much. I can't imagine equipment working diagonally across a 45-degree slope. That would be pretty dangerous. But anyway, and it was quite a ways up, and all the houses were down closer to the river. And what this guy did is he'd made a little business for himself. He would, and he could scramble up that groomed hill like nothing on all fours. And he would come down and take people's orders for groceries, and then he would go and do the shopping for you, and then deliver your groceries to you for, I can't remember if it was a set fee or if he just went by tips. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had made some deal with the store too, got a discount on his groceries. So, so like I say, we called him Dino. There was really no malice in that. He was a great little guy. And it's, if that's 50 years ago, and if it was today, we'd probably have called him Skip or Uber. The other thing that was kind of odd at Soria was that there was no liquor available. The little store had no beer, wine, anything like that. The only thing they had was a honey liqueur, which is the worst crap I ever drank in my life. It was absolutely horrible. So going without beer and wine was a sacrifice that we had to make, and actually went enough trips in and out of there that we did bring some back with us. But it is odd that they would have the honey liqueur but no other alcohol, beer or wine. I mean, they would have made a lot more money, but that's the way it was. The other thing about Soria is my biggest memory of my experiences there was just how peaceful and quiet it was, and how beautiful the weather was. It was literally this little paradise on earth, and I'll never forget it for that. And so that's where we lived. It was great. We met a bunch of people. I never crossed to the other side of the river myself. Didn't really feel any need for it. But one of the guys did, or maybe all three did, and snooped around over there. And well, that's neither here nor there. But anyway, it's the week before Christmas. Now I've lost track of the dates here, but I have to be in Las Palmas to meet my friend Ken on Christmas Day. And so I take the bus from Soria back to Las Palmas. And I guess the plan was that Lee and Terry were going to come right after Christmas and spend a couple days in Las Palmas. So I'm not really sure about that, but they did come to Las Vegas. I did meet Ken, although it wasn't on Christmas Day. It was the day after Christmas. And I don't remember where we stayed or what we were doing, but we met Lee and Terry. They came to town. We spent a day on the beach there. One of the days, just it was packed, and lots of girls in bikinis, and so we had a great day. Anyway, just kicking back and girl watching and drinking beer, and I knew at that time, or we had discovered, because Lee and Terry and Damon, they also wanted to go to Morocco. I wanted to go to Morocco, and Ken and I, we'd already talked about this. This was our plan, is we were going to go to Morocco. But the Moroccan government had decided that they were sick and tired of long-haired hippies coming there and just living on the beaches and living as cheaply as they could and just smoking hash. And so they were a little tired of that. And we knew that the most popular way to get in, or probably the best way, is from Spain at the Strait of Gibraltar. I forget what the Spanish town is on the Spanish side, but it's just a 20-minute ferry ride over to Tangiers on the Moroccan side. And we had talked to several people, and we knew that at that time, that if you took the ferry ride over there and you had the long hair and a backpack, that you'd be taking the same ferry back to Spain. They would not let you in. We knew that if you flew in, that you'd be accepted, no problem, because this made you, I guess, look like you had more money, or I don't know, I can't speak for the Moroccans, but we didn't have money for airfare. That was out. And on that day that we spent on the beach, we ran into a guy, and we got talking about this problem, and he told us that there was actually another way to get into Morocco that he knew people had done and would be successful. And that involved the Spanish Sahara. There's Morocco, and then the country straight south, bordering Morocco on the southern border, was the Spanish Sahara. At that time, now I've looked since, and that's changed. It's now called the Western Sahara. But anyway, at that time it was Spanish Sahara. He said, what you do is you go to the consulate for the Spanish Sahara, or the embassy, I forget, whatever it was, and you apply for a visa. That's the first thing you have to do. And once you've done that, then there's troop ships that come regularly from Spain, and they stop at Las Palmas because it's a duty-free port, and they give all the men a few days off before they go over and they're on duty. And there was actually a dispute going on between Morocco and the Spanish Sahara over the border. And so the troop ships were fairly regular, but they would stop in Las Palmas, give the men a few days off, duty-free port, go crazy, and then it was back to work. But you could book passage on the troop ship over to Alayun, which is in the very northern part of the Spanish Sahara. And once you'd done that, then from Alayun, you could take a taxi, and the taxi would take you to a border town, the Moroccan border town. And from there was a supply truck that came. Now, this was a bit of an issue, we thought, because the supply truck only came once a week. And so it was possible that we might have to spend as much as 6 days in this border town waiting on the truck. But not really having any other options, we just decided to go ahead with this. So the four of us, now I guess it had already been predetermined that Damon was not, the other guy from Saskatchewan, from PA, was not going to going to Morocco. He was going to stay in charge of the van, stay at Soria, and then he and his two friends would have a date and a planned meet in Spain. They would spend all the rest of the time in Morocco, and then Damon would drive, take the ferry back to Spain, and they would all meet up over there. So they had that all worked out between them. So, but we do have the four of us. So we go down, we find the next day or very shortly after that. We all agree this is okay. This sounds like an adventure. Let's do this. Okay, so we find the Spanish Sahara consulate, and they were great. I do remember a little bit about that. And we go in and we fill out the application for the visa, and there was a small fee we had to pay. And I remember the guy, he knew exactly how it was going to take, and he told us when we could come back and pick up our visas, that they would be ready on this certain date. Now, I want to say that it was 5 days, which would sound pretty normal. Sounds about right to me. But I have my passport from that trip. I still have it. And I was looking through there. I was curious about when we got stamped into Morocco. And that was on the 19th of January. So there's some missing time in there. Like we would have had to leave, the way it turned out, on the troop ship to Ali Un on the 16th, the night of the 16th. So we would have gotten there on the 17th and gotten all the way to the border town. And I'll tell the rest of that story later. And then it took 2 days to get from the border town, took 2 days to get to the customs office. We were 2 days on the road. So there's this gap of between Christmas and these 16 days. And that's where I'm having all the trouble with. So I'll tell you what I do remember. I know that after we had filled out these forms and applied for the visa, that we went back to Soria. And Terry and Lee still had a place where they could go, but there wasn't room for Ken and I. And so we had looked around trying to find a place, and there really wasn't anything. But there was a guy living in a cave. And so we talked to him, and he said, well, you can stay here. There's lots of room. And so we did. We stayed in this cave. So I'll just stop there for a second, because this 16 days does bug me. So I think perhaps what happened is that we spent the day between Christmas and New Year's after I met Ken, learned this information about Soria, and or not about Soria, but about alternate way to get into Morocco. And then we may have gone back to Soria. I think probably that's what happened. And then we discussed it there. And then Damon and the other two would have been able to discuss their plans. And then we would have taken the Volkswagen van back to Las Palmas, the four of us, sometime, I don't know, maybe by now it's the 10th of January, and then applied for our visas. I think that's more likely what happened, that it took us a few days to actually decide that this is what we want to do. So, but anyway, okay, so we've done all that. Now it's time to pick up our visas. And I don't remember how we learned about the troop ship, what we had to do, when the next one was coming, but that was important too, because we don't want to be running back and forth. And so we wanted to have everything all timed together, and we did get lucky on that. So the troop ship, as it turned out, was going to be in port. So it was going to leave on the 16th, would have arrived on the 14th, something like that. So we find out where it is and jump through whatever hoops we had to book passage on this troop ship, which turned out not to be a problem. So they were happy to take us across. So anyway, on the 16th, we show up, and it's going to be a night crossing. This troop ship is leaving late in the afternoon. I just forget. But we were overnight. And what we got was a deck chair at the front of the deck, or at the front of the ship. And there was 13 of us. That was a shock. There was the four of us from Saskatchewan. There was 4 French girls, and there was a couple from Australia, and then there was 3 Americans. And so here we are, all 13 of us doing the same thing, and get on this ship, and we never saw any troops, never saw anything. They get us up to the front of the ship. We all have a chair, and away we go. Fortunately, it was very calm that night. There was no issues whatsoever. And we make our way over to, well, the African coast. The Canary Islands are right off the African coast in the southern part of Morocco, and it's just an overnight trip. Well, Alioune has got the longest pier in the world, I'm telling you, way, 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 way out. And I guess that was, I don't know, Spain built it so they could dock their ships there, perhaps. But we're first off the ship. They pull up alongside this massively long dock, and this ladder comes down on the side, and we're off first, and all 13 of us with our backpacks and everything. But Alioune isn't right on the coast. It's like a mile inland. In fact, you can't even really see it. And so we walk into town. Takes a while. None of us have slept. I'm sure I didn't sleep. I can't speak for the other ones, but get to Alioune and walk until we get sort of what we figured looks like the center of town. There's cafes anyway, and so we all managed to get a coffee and a pastry or some kind of food. Now, it's kind of odd because it's called the Spanish Sahara, and so Spain is there, but at one time it had been a French protectorate, and French is their second language, not Spanish, we found out. And so it was, we were quite fortunate to have these 4 French girls with us, and they negotiated with the cab drivers. We needed cabs to take us up to the border. This is what we've been told, right? And so these 4 girls do that, and we get 4 taxis for 13 of us with our backpacks, and these cars were not that big. We all pile in these cars downtown, and away we go. And these guys are just nuts, these taxi drivers. They're crazy. And they all take a different direction. Like, leaving through town, they all went a different way, different roads, and we hit the edge of town, and now we're in desert, and it's just this huge cloud of dust, all 4 of these cars. We can't even see the other guys, and they're going like mad across the desert. And this goes, well, actually not for very long. And somehow they all came together at the same time and stopped. And so we can't even see, like, there's so much dust and everything. So we get out, and we're standing there, and the dust finally starts to settle. We think we're at the border town at Morocco, or at this Moroccan border town. And as the dust settles, we realize that we're actually not. We're just out in the middle of the desert. And so now these girls are talking to the cab drivers, and they're pointing at where the town is, and we're squinting and looking, and I guess we can see a couple of buildings, like it's way, way, way in the distance. But these cab drivers refuse to go any further. They absolutely will not. They're done. This is as far as they're going. I think probably it had something to do with the dispute over the border. So now I should just stop here because I don't want to be misleading about what it was actually like. We never saw any troops on either side, or any fighting, or there was no, like, we didn't have across a land field or anything like that. Okay. But these cab drivers, they will not go any further. So we have nothing else we can do except pay them off, get our stuff. They take off. And now here we are, 13 of us, standing out in the Sahara Desert with the only thing we can do is start walking, which we do. Now, I know everybody's seen pictures of the desert, and it's not sand at this part of the desert anyway. It's not sand dunes and loose sand. It was hard packed, almost like cement. It was really hard, and there were tiny little plants that were like a foot high, that we were told later that were like, 150, 200 years old, that survive. Somehow they get started, and they're able to survive just from the fog that comes in and gets them wet. And So the walking wasn't really that hard. It was just the idea of it. And we had to be, I want to say 2 miles. And that's a long way to walk. But we have no option. And so we do. And so however long it took us, anyway, we finally make it to this little town, and it was tiny. There was a hotel there. They called it a hotel. There was a small restaurant bar, and whoever ran that also ran this hotel. Well, that's stretching things a bit, because it was just one room with a cement floor and a roof on it. And but we could buy a few things at this little restaurant. It was really tiny, like 2 tables, and there was a few men in there. They were playing dominoes, and I guess there was nothing else to do in this town. And come to think of it, I don't know what the hell these people did do. There was no sign of any business or nothing at all. Just these houses. So it was kind of strange that way. So we got charged a little bit. It was very cheap to stay in this hotel. And of course, we're quizzing him about the supply truck. And he said, well, he was expecting it any day, that it hadn't been there for a while. So this is good news. This cheers us up. And what we ate is so often, and especially when we were in Morocco, as the story goes on here, and all my time in Europe, was bread. And they have wonderful, wonderful bread over there, baked fresh every morning. And they're loaves, but they're round loaves, and they're maybe, I don't know, 3 inches thick, something like that, maybe 10 inches across, and cheese, and that's basically what we lived on over there. The interesting thing about this little cafe out there in the absolute middle of nowhere is that you could buy a bottle of Coke and a Hershey chocolate bar. I found that to be pretty amazing. In fact, I did buy a chocolate bar and stick it in my backpack just for emergency supplies. So we spend the evening there. I have no idea how we pass the time, but we do. And the next day, the supply truck shows up. Fantastic. Could not have worked out any better. And this is like a 3-ton grain truck. And he pulls in and they do their business. He unloads some stuff. And whatever their business was, I don't know. I suppose he's doing mail and whatever. And checks us out and charges us so much. It was cheap anyway. He's got 13 passengers now to take back with him. And so there wasn't a lot of room in this truck, really. The back of it, like I say, was like a grain truck with sides. And in there was all these boxes. And it was pretty filled up, like 2/3 of the way up to the top. And so we all get in there, and we're all sitting up really high on top of these boxes. And but that's fine. I wouldn't call it comfort deluxe, but we were okay. And away we go in this truck. Now, there's no road. And so presumably these guys, there was 2 of them. Anyway, driver and a helper. And so these guys probably do this trip all the time. They knew what to do. They knew where to go. And there are landmarks. It wasn't totally flat. And there was mountains. And you could see a break in the mountains. And then more mountains on the other side. And I guess that's kind of where we went, was through this gap. And we're plodding along. We're not moving very fast. It's pretty rough. It wasn't like when we were walking, it was, you could avoid the rocks and everything. But it was pretty rough, and he was taking his time. So that's fine. Nothing we can do about it. Just sit back and relax. So we don't go very far. It's maybe by the middle of the afternoon at that time. And we have a flat tire on the truck. Oh, great. Okay, so stop. We all get down, and these guys aren't concerned at all, the driver and his helper. Not at all. And the first thing they do is go around and they gather up a whole bunch of twigs and build a fire. and get a kettle going on there, boiling some water, and they make tea. And they make tea for everybody. Mint tea. It's fantastic. Is the best way I can describe it. It was delicious, and it quenched your thirst. And so I can assume from that people who live in that part of the world in that kind of an environment know the best thing to do. And I know I've had mint tea since then. Commercially sold in stores, mint tea. It's just not the same at all. I shouldn't say at all. It's mint, obviously, but to have fresh mint used to make your tea, it was fantastic. And it just all kind of makes me laugh, really, that they would make tea first and then fix the tire second, because at home on the farm, we'd do the opposite. We get a flat tire, we fix the tire first and then relax and have a tea or coffee, more likely. But anyway, that's the way they did it. And these guys had everything they needed. They had a spare tire, and they had patch kits. I'm sure they had everything. And you can get those compressors that, you take a spark plug out and you hook it up, attach it to screw it into the block of the engine to get air if you need it. So anyway, we finally get the tire fixed, and we all get back up in the truck, and away we go. And I don't know at what point we realized that I don't think any of us knew before, but this is a 2-day trip. We're not getting to our destination that day. And at some point, they pull over, and that's it. We're done for the day. So, and these guys made tea for us again, so that was great. And we've all got our bread and cheese, and I had a little bit of chocolate if I wanted to dig into it. But so it's kind of the way it worked was, okay, this boys are over here, girls are over there, or girls' bathroom is over there, boys' bathroom is over this way. And that was it. We stayed right there and spent the night, unrolled our sleeping bags out in the desert, and that's where we spent the night. So, and it was fine, really. It wasn't cold or anything like that. There was no wild animals sniffing around, or I don't know, any snakes. Who knows what was going on out there in the middle of the night, but... So anyway, morning does come, and we had tea again. These guys, I guess our passage included tea. And so we all eat a little something and use the bathroom, such as it is, and climb back in the truck, and away we go. And I don't know when it was we finally get to the first town, or whether it was even the first town that we stopped at. But we do start to get into civilization. And we have to clear customs. And so whether it was the first or second little place we come to, I forget, but eventually come to, it's a little bigger place, and he drives with the truck, he pulls in, and we stop, and we all get out, and we form a line, and we go through this little customs office, and it's just this old guy in there, and he could have cared less. I mean, we could have had Uzi machine guns in our backpacks and grenades, and he could have cared less. And so we just walked by, and we opened our passport, and he'd stamp it, and we just keep going, and that was it. Did that 13 times, and we all got back in the truck, and away we went. But Ken and I had made a mistake there. Before we left Las Palmas being a duty-free port, and Ken and I both being smokers, we had each bought 2 cartons of cigarettes. And we knew that we could take 2 cartons of cigarettes legally with us into Morocco. Duty-free cigarettes. And so we had done this. And we should have got our cigarette stamps showing that we had legally brought them into the country. That did not happen, unfortunately. But anyway, we don't realize it at the time. And so our trip continues from there. And late that afternoon, we get to Agadir, which is a Moroccan city. It's on the very south coast of Morocco. And I remember when we could first see it and how sort of modern it looked. Like there was not skyscrapers, but a cluster of taller buildings, which would have been, I guess, in the center of town. And we learned later that there'd been a big earthquake there, I don't know when, many years before, and that it had basically destroyed the city, all the mud huts and stone huts. And so when they rebuilt, they had built it more in a European fashion, better construction methods. And so that was kind of unique to Agadir, because we didn't see much of that in Morocco at all. So the truck stopped in town, but like I say, we're right on the coast. And I don't know what everybody else did, but the four of us went down to the beach, and that's where we spent that night, there on the beach. And there was quite a few people down there doing the same thing. And I always talk about commerce. Well, commerce is alive and well on the beaches in Morocco. And we purchased hash that very first night. And there was people around selling food, bread, and different little delicacies, sweets, and you could get tea or coffee. And but the hashish that we bought, Moroccan hash, of course, at 25 cents a gram for small amounts. Outrageous. I should have mentioned this earlier. When we had hash when we were in on the Canary Islands, and we'd paid $2 a gram for it there, $2 US. So you might think that just that little overnight drive in a boat, perhaps the hash might be a little bit cheaper in Las Palmas, but no. And 25 cents a gram for small amounts was pretty standard. We found that out anywhere in Morocco. We did see kilos, which, that's 1,000 grams for $100. So that's 10 cents a gram. And, I'm sure that any enterprising person who was looking at a much bigger picture, if they were over there buying 100 kilos or more, or however many, that price would come down to $60 or $70 a kilo, I'm sure, quite easily. So that's 6 or 7 cents a gram. I'm mentioning all this now because I want to talk about hash later on in another podcast. But so anyway, that's where we spent the first night, and I believe 2 or 3 more nights. We were quite comfortable just to sit there and on the ocean, and just to kick back, have some tokes, and just, like I say, relax. We finally decided it was time to move on, and we chose Marrakesh to be our next destination, and we took the bus. And it was quite the colorful trip. This rickety old bus that stopped at every little town that we came to, and the bus was packed with people getting on, people getting off, and there was any of the stories that you've heard about traveling by bus in Arab countries like that is absolutely true. Like, there was crates of live chickens on the roof, and people bringing their goats on the bus with them, and but it was a lot of fun. I remember that, and how colorful the Moroccan people are, the women and the men too. Just the colors in their skirts and everything they wore, and the kids, everybody. And so it was a long day getting to Marrakesh. So I'll just tell you where we stayed. We found this, it was almost like a motel. It's the only thing you can call it, really. I don't think they would use that word over there, but it was a kind of a rectangular building. It was 2 stories with rooms all the way around it on both stories, and the center of the courtyard was wide open with a few orange trees in there. And the room that Ken and I had 2 beds in it, and it was $1 a night, $1 American, $1 US per night. And in the morning, they came around with coffee, fresh baked bread, and marmalade. So, pretty good deal. And we were traveling, of course, with Terry and Lee, and they had a room as well, and same thing. So, and we were having a pretty good time there. What we did all day long, like, days are pretty long, like, really not a heck of a lot to do. But just enjoying the people in the Medina, the big market area, and just wandering around. And, of course, smoking our hash and buying keef. Now, keef is Keef is the dried tops of the marijuana plant, the bud, and it's tinder dry, and they chop it up like tobacco, and then they mix it with their own local tobacco. I don't know, 50-50, I suppose, something like that. And then they make these little packages out of paper, and quite an ingenious little way of doing it, and that's how it's sold. And it's smoked openly all over the place, particularly by the old men in the Medina. And hash is sold openly. Hash is not illegal at all in Morocco. But the keef is, or can be, like if the authorities want to push it, they can. And the reason is not because of the marijuana in it, it's because of the tobacco, because the taxes haven't been paid on the tobacco. So I don't think we knew that or would have thought of it ourselves, for certainly not. But it does come into play a little bit later. I remember this, we found a restaurant, it was a rooftop restaurant where we could see down onto the Medina, and we ate there every night, and we would get steak, French fries, and a salad. And that was $1 US. Now, we learned that, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it certainly could be, that it was horse meat that we were eating. Now, I don't know where they would have gotten that from. I never saw a horse the whole time I was over there, so... But like I say, we did have a good time. And now, when we left Las Palmas, it is a duty-free port, and Ken and I both smoked. And I can't remember about Terry and Lee, probably. Everybody seemed to smoke in those days, cigarettes. And so we'd each bought 2 cartons of American cigarettes, Marlboro cigarettes. And I believe they were $2 a carton in this duty-free port to bring with us. We were told that that's the maximum that we were allowed to bring or take out of the country, however you want to look at it. And I was smoking mine, so was Ken, and then Ken got this idea in his head that he was going to quit smoking, and he did. He quit smoking. And so now he's got 1 full carton of cigarettes and another half a carton or whatever it was. And Ken is such a gregarious guy, and bartering is right up his alley. This is great for him. And somehow he got it into his head that he was going to barter this carton of cigarettes for, I don't know, anything. Like, you just try and make a deal of some kind with these cigarettes. And we were down in the Medina, and I was with him. I was standing right beside him, and he's holding this carton up, and he's trying to talk to these people, and other people are interested, and he's trying to do some barter with them. And these 2 cops came up to us, maybe there was 3, plain clothes, and said, "Can we see your passports?" And so you always have your passport with you. So we took our passports out, handed them to the police, and the police said, "Come with us." Just like that. So we go with them, they take us in this van, and they take us downtown to the city jail and put us in jail. And there's really no conversation. They don't speak English. They don't have to tell us anything. I guess they didn't tell us anything. They just throw us in jail, just like that. Terry and Lee saw the whole thing happen, so they knew where we were, what had happened to us, fortunately. And we spent 2 nights in the city jail in Marrakesh. And we don't know what the hell's going on. We can't believe this, first of all, that we had done anything. Certainly I hadn't. Like, Ken was bartering cigarettes. And we had hash and we had keef on us as well. And all our stuff, we had our cameras and... So anyway, after 2 days go by, it's in the morning, and so they come and they get us, take us up outside, and we're going with relief. Okay, finally, God, we're out of this, thank God. And they give us back our cameras, they give us back our hash, our keef, they give everything that they'd taken from us out of our pockets, everything we had on us, they give back to us. So we think this is it, we're free to go, right? And so... out the door we go with these 2 cops, and they lead us onto this bus and put us on this bus, and it's packed with other Moroccans our age or older or whatever, and it's a prison bus. And they lock us in there, and the driver, and there's guards on there, and they take us to the main prison, which is called the Prison de Seville, some French name for I don't know why. And they check us in there, and it was like we can't believe what's happening to us. And they throw us in this cell, and there's no other Canadians in there, but there was a couple of Americans, and there was these people. I don't know where they were from, if they were American. They did speak English, and they were called the Children of God. And they had been arrested for, I guess they were over there, they were very right-wing in their religious beliefs, and they had been thrown in jail for distributing subversive material. That was the charge, or that's what they told us that they'd been charged with. And we found out from the Americans that were in there that they had been charged with these illegal tobacco, having tobacco illegally. The taxes hadn't been paid on it. And they had been sentenced to, the initial sentence was 5 months in jail and $1,000 fine. Now these are approximate, like, because with the Moroccan currency and the difference between the Moroccan currency and the American. See what I'm trying to say? It's not exact, but that's approximately what the fine was and the amount of time that they'd been sentenced to. And we can't believe what we're hearing. And they also told us that this is a bit of a scam that the Moroccans run, that they always have a half a dozen or so foreigners in there on these same trumped-up charges. So it's a long, crazy story. I don't know if I can even recount it properly after all these years. But so we're in there. So that afternoon, the same day, they take me out of there. They leave Ken there, and two guys come and they get me. And when they go back, we go back to our motel, and we go up to our room there, and they leave me outside. And there must have been three. One guy stays outside with me, and two guys go inside, and they search our motel room. And they come out with this kind of aha, and they've got in their hand, it was a hash cookie, I guess is what it was. Like there's this language barrier, right? But I can see what it is they're holding. And so I'm going, no, that's not ours. No, we didn't have that. And we didn't. It did not belong to us. And I'll never understand why they would do that. What was the purpose of that? We already had hash on us, which I guess is not illegal, but we had the keef with the tobacco in it. And so the only thing that, I don't know, that I can come up with, is I think they realized that I was actually, had nothing to do with, there was no reason for them to have charged me in the first place. It was Ken that they were pissed off at. And at that point, with them, with this hash cookie business, is that I perhaps could have bribed my way out of the situation right there and then. It actually didn't occur to me. I think at that point I'm still in disbelief that this is happening. I wouldn't have had my traveler's checks with me anyway. They were with all my possessions. You carry that stuff with you all the time. And so it was in the prison. It didn't occur to me anyway. So that's the only thing that I can think of. And so now they just take me back to prison, throw me back in the same big room that Ken and all these other guys are in, the Americans and the Children of God. So we find out from these guys in there that we're going to have to go to court, which we do. That took a few days. I've forgotten how many. Because we haven't been sentenced yet. We're just being held. And we have these charges. There's no communication. We don't have access to a phone or anybody. There's nobody we can talk to. But the Canadian consulate was informed that we were in there. And he did come after a few days, And he was completely fucking useless. Okay, it was like talking to a wall. They just assume that if you're in prison and drugs are involved, that you're guilty, and they don't give a shit. They're not going to do anything for you. And he didn't. And he made noises like they were there to help us and blah blah blah. So we see him for like 15 minutes. Now he's done his duty, right? He goes back to where his wife and kids and his bottle of whiskey, whatever the fuck he does. I don't know. We never see him again. And then we get hauled off into court, and we don't know what's going on. Like, how you can't know what's going on. But Ken gets up anyway, being the way he is, and he's waving his arms and talking and going, no, 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 and all this. And we had to wait till afterwards to find out what happened. And we do find out that we've been found guilty on this, having the tobacco in our keef. And we've received this standard sentence, this 5 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. So now I guess we knew this before we got into court from the other guys, but what you do in there to get around this or to lessen the blow, so to speak, is that the Red Cross lady comes and visits like once every 2 weeks or 10 days, or again, I can't remember exactly what it is. So, but she will bring you a paper and pen and then help you fill out what is an appeal. And this is how you appeal your sentence. And she helps you with that. And then she takes it and presents it to the court or gives it to the clerk of the court or something like that. And then the judge will reconsider his sentence, and he reduces your amount of time from 5 months down to 1 month, and reduces your fine from $1,000 down to $100. It wasn't $100. In the end, it ended up being more like $125 to $150, somewhere in that range. And so this is fine. We've got our fine reduced and the amount of time reduced, but we're getting towards the end of our European trip. Like, we do not have that much money. Basically, we're going to our plan was to stay in Morocco until we were almost out of cash, and then get back to Europe and fly home. And so this fine, neither one of us have the money to pay this fine. So now we have to write a letter home. We can't phone. And again, we use the Red Cross lady. So isn't this wonderful now? Here we are in prison in Morocco, and we're writing home to our parents to ask for money to pay our fines so we can get home. And but anyway, that's what we did. That's what we had to do. And so, I mean, they're your parents, right? So they're obviously disappointed in their son, but, the money does come. And I was able to pay my fine, and Ken as well. And I had served my month. I was in there 28 days. Now, with Ken, and we have no way really of knowing what exactly happened, but I get released, but Ken doesn't. And so he was another week in there, an extra week. And what we were told, and we went to the consulate, and what they said was that they're very relaxed in their way of doing things over there, and that the judge will only look at things perhaps once a week. And when it came to our file, that he looked at it and he got through mine and he approved it. And then he quit. It was coffee time or whatever, or he got distracted and he went away, and then he didn't get back to doing his job again for another week. And that Ken got missed out on that and had to spend an extra week in the prison there. I'm not sure that I believe that. I think that maybe there was still, they wanted to show that, with such a small way of showing it, that he should serve more time than I did, seeing as I did fucking nothing, and served 28 days. So anyway, that's just my theory. Got no way of proving anything, or no way of knowing. But Ken was in there. He was in there 35 days. I did 28 days. So I'll just tell you about the prison, what it was like in there. It was fucking horrible, as you can imagine. Medieval would be a good way to put it. I had dysentery for 11 days. Basically, the first 11 days that I was in there, just running to the bathroom constantly. And the only way that you can, you're dehydrated. Well, the only thing you can do is drink the water, drink more of the water, right? But eventually I did get over it. I was the only one. I don't know why me, but I did have to go through that. The food, we got fed. Well, first of all, what saved us is every prisoner in there gets a loaf of bread every day. And the bread is the same as like we bought when we were in the border town, okay? Basically exactly the same thing. These loaves that are about 3 inches thick and 10 inches across. And that's what we lived on. That's what we survived for that month on. They would they would come around at mealtime. We had these bowls. They were tin bowls, like a soup bowl size. And they would come around with a big tub of couscous with some vegetables in it and maybe a little bit of lamb in there. And they would take the bowls and they would just scoop in there, and then the bowl would get passed to somebody, and then the next bowl filled and passed. And sometimes I could eat it, sometimes I couldn't. I don't know what a lot of that stuff was in there, but if I didn't eat it, somebody else would. So some of it was okay. Those bowls never got washed the whole time I was in there, except in cold water. So there was that little detail too that was kind of disturbing. On Sunday, we got half a can of sardines. So you would have a buddy, would be Ken and I in this case. We would get 1 can of sardines, and that was the big meal of the week. And pretty damn good too, I can tell you. So with your bread and the sardines, it did make a pretty decent meal. But talk about endless hours of frustration and nothing to do, not a thing to do in there. There was no games to play, no deck of cards, no dominoes, there was nothing. No, there's always a boss too. It seems wherever you go. And in this cell, it was just a big room, is all it was. Like, we slept on the floor. There was blankets. They would put down a blanket, and then you laid on top of that blanket, and then there was another blanket to go on top of you. Now, these blankets were lice infested. Our clothes were lice infested. Our hair, body lice. You could feel them crawling around on you. It was. And one thing we would do, we would get to go out in the yard in the afternoon for a couple hours, and we would take our clothes off, take our pants off, turn them inside out, and go through the seams, and you could see the lice eggs in there, little white clusters of eggs, and we would just take and crush them between our fingernails. I don't know why. Like, it didn't help. You couldn't get rid of them, but we did do that. We got a shower once a week. It was just a big room with shower heads were above us, and there was like there was probably in our cell, all the cells I think were the same. There was probably 30 people in our cell, and so when you went for a shower, all 30 went for the shower at the same time, and you went into another room that was about the same size, and the shower heads were just up above you. And they turned it on and you went in there. I can't remember. I don't think we had shampoo. We just had some soap of some kind. And but getting back, I started to talk about the boss. And Ken, like I mentioned, pretty gregarious guy. The boss, he's smoking keef every night, every day. And Ken manages to... And just with his personality, like the language barrier is there totally. There's not even any pidgin English except for one guy who we tried to use as an interpreter a little bit, but his English was so bad. It was just he had some English words that he'd heard somewhere, and he couldn't form a sentence. And So we tried to use him a little bit as an interpreter with kind of as the boss guy, but somehow Ken was able to anyway get sort of friendly with him, just using sign language and just being his friendly self. And Ken managed to get us some tokes in there. And just us. Just Ken and I. Not the other Americans or the children of God, so just the two of us. So that was kind of nice, I guess. Some little thing to look forward to. We get one toke at night sort of thing. That's my Moroccan jail story.